Hello and welcome to another episode of the Math Enigma. This video is going to be a bit longer because I'm going to cover some different ways of completing the square. So I've got about 3 or 4 pages all set up. This is our first page, so we can just jump right in. For reference, this is a 10th grade assignment that I was given that was recently done. So just took a couple problems to work out myself and walk through with everyone that watches this video. So let's start with this first problem up here. Remember to have your pencil because we're all human and we make mistakes. So it's good to have that eraser. And throughout this process, if there's any time that you need to pause, record, take a break, please feel free to, because I know that this can all be overwhelming. And sometimes you just have to think of different ways to do things. So let's go ahead and start with this first problem. So the first problem, we want to find the principal square root of each side to find the answer. So the first problem is x squared plus 12x plus 36 equals 25. If you hear meowing tonight, that is my cat needing extra attention. So sorry about that. So for this first problem, we are going to temporarily ignore this 25 and focus on x squared plus 12x plus 36. By now, you should be familiar with the FOIL process. And if you aren't, I can make another video. Just leave me a comment below on how that works. So I'm just going to go ahead and hop into this. Whenever I look at these problems, I think of what plus what equals this number and can multiply by each other to get this number. So since we know this is a square, it has to be the same number. So 6 plus 6 equals 12, and 6 times 6 is 36. That's how we find out this is going to be x plus 6 times x plus 6, which another way to write this is x plus 6 squared equals 25. And now the 25 is back in the picture. We didn't even have it off to the side that long. So now we will take the square root, and what we do to one side, we have to do to the other because we're solving for x. So I put the square roots on each side. Also, if you notice, most of the time with my x's, I try to include this little loop just so we don't get confused with multiplication. Anytime I do use multiplication, I try to use either parentheses or the dot. That was just a random thing that crossed my mind. So, now that we've got this square root symbol, we can now cancel out this square. So this will become x plus 6 equals the square root of 25. With this, because of how they graph out when it comes to these types of equations, you now will have a plus minus sign because it can be on either side of the x-axis. And then the square root of 25 is 5. So now we want to get x alone. To do that, we need to take 6 away. Not plus 6. What you do to one side, you need to do to the other. So now we're going to have 2 different answers. X equals 5 minus 6 and x equals negative 5 minus 6. So that answer becomes x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 11. And you just boop that in there and write answer. If you want to validate this to make sure you are correct, what you do is you come up here and you just start by first plugging in that negative 1 plus 12 times negative 1 plus 36 equals 25. So this is going to be 1 plus, incorrect, it's negative 1 times 12, sorry, minus 12 plus 36. That is negative 11. 36 minus 11 is 25 equals 25. You get your little check marks, and then you can also go back in and plug in that negative 11 to validate. So, validation. Booyah. First problem done. Now we're going to just take a breath, hop straight into number 2. This time I'm not going to run a validation. If you would like to run a validation, you are more than welcome to. No stress. It's okay to double check me. It's how we get better at these things. So, again, we're just looking at this problem saying what plus what equals 6 that can also be multiplied by each other to get 9. And since it's square rooting, right now for this first 2 problems, it's going to be the same thing, same number. So that is going to be 3. 3 plus 3 equals 6, and 3 times 3 equals 9. So it's x plus 3 squared equals 49 divided by 4. So with this, there are 2 ways to look at the square root of this side. Some people just do a big square root. I personally do not like to do that, but to each their own. I like to write a square root over each top and bottom of the division. For me, that just makes sure my mind doesn't miss one of the numbers. So everyone's different in the way they're going to do this. This is just my personal preference. So taking the square root, that cancels out. X plus 3 equals, the square root of 49 is 7 divided by the square root of 4, which is 2. And since we took the square root, we need to take that plus minus. Now we want to get x alone. So you take the 3 and subtract it. And what you do to one side, you now have to do to the other. So we will have x equals 7 divided by 2 minus 3 and negative 7 divided by 2 minus 3. Let me scooch this a little over. So to finish solving this problem, you want to make sure that you can subtract these. So 3 is also equal to 6 over 2. The way you figure that out, 6 divided by 2 equals 3. If you're like, I want to put this over 2, it's 2 times 3 is 6. It's pretty fluid that way, I guess would be the word I would use. So just plug that back in here. So 7 divided by 2 minus 6 divided by 2. That is going to be x equals 1/2. And we have negative 7 divided by 2 minus 6 divided by 2. And that's going to give us negative 13 divided by 2. And there is your answer. I hope these are not hard to see. I'm using a little bit different paper than I normally use. And I know it can be sometimes difficult, so I'm trying to make sure to write with a heavy hand. Again, please feel free to validate this on your own. Remember that with these things, practice makes perfect. It takes time, and you just have to sit there and think about it. And the more you practice this, the more comfortable you'll get. And it really is just going to be that rule of what plus what equals this number that will also equal that times that equals that number. It's just something you're going to kind of have to get familiar with if you're moving on to calculus and things like that. It's just something you're going to constantly be seeing. So, moving on to the next part for completing the square, we're now going to be writing it in the form of x minus p to the square root equals q. So for this problem, I chose x squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. So there are two ways to do this, and I'm going to show you both. The first way is kind of the long-winded way. The second way that I'm going to do the rest of the problems in that are on the other pages, it's a little bit faster on it, in my opinion. It may not be for you, and you can do it the first way that I show. There's no judgment. So here, the first way we're going to do it is where you take the constant plus 3 and you move it to the other side. So to get rid of it, it's minus 3. Minus what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. That becomes x squared plus 4x equals negative 3. The reason I left a blank space here is because we kind of want to get to this place where there's enough room to write in this next part. So you want it to be a square, and I'm thinking what plus what, that's going to be the same number, equals 4. That's going to be 2 plus 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. So this is plus 4. Well, what I did to this side, I now have to do to this side. And now I can make this a square, like the squared up equation, nice and pretty like that. And then we'll have q. So this is going to be x plus 2 squared equals 1. The way to write this, if this is not an acceptable answer for your teacher, they want to see that negative, then what you do is you go x minus negative 2, because a negative times a negative makes a positive. And then you wrap these in squares, and then equals 1. It's the same answer. The nice thing about math is you can write things extremely complicated, but there's typically a simpler answer, just depending on what the person wants. So this is the traditional way, I would say. The way I like to work this problem, because it is how my brain thinks, is just, let's rewrite it out. X squared plus 4x plus 3 equals 0. I'm thinking what times what that's the same number, or what plus what that's the same number gets us 4 is 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. Well, if I've got plus 3, all I need to do is add 1. So then it's plus 4. Because what I do to one side, I do to the other, and it's okay. So then this becomes x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 1. I just took out 2 steps of that problem that you had to do there, gave it to you in 1. But again, this is however your brain works. For you to put those pieces together, you do not have to do it my way. Whatever you are comfortable with. If walking it out while you're still getting comfortable with it, by all means, please walk it out. This is just me. I like that short and snappy way that's like, oh, it's supposed to be a 4, so I know what to do. So then it goes down to that x plus 2 squared equals 1, or x minus negative 2 squared equals 1. Answer. And in high school and college, for me, this was just how I always did it, because it will get to the point that you're going to have so much writing you want your teacher to just be able to find your answer, and then they can see what was your work. That's just a good way to practice that. Just a deep breath, shake it out. Get some water if you need it. Sharpen your pencil if you need to. Mine's getting a little dull, and I think my other one rolled away somewhere. If it's not on the side of the book. So, all right. Again, we're all human. We all need a break. There's no problem with that. So if you need a break, go ahead and pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and proceed. And I'm going to solve the problem by completing the square. So we have x squared plus 10x minus 1 equals 0. So in my head, I go what plus what equals 10, which is 5 plus 5. So what is 5 times 5? It's 26. Or it's 25. Whoops, skipped part. So I want this to be plus 25. In order to get that, I have to add 26 to the problem. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. That way it's okay. So this will now become x squared plus 10x plus 25 equals 26. And as we had just discussed, what plus what and what times what give us these answers? It's 5, so then that way we know it's okay to proceed with the x plus 5 squared equals 26. All right, well now we need to complete the square. So we'll go ahead and take the square root. That cancels that out. X plus 5 equals plus or minus, don't forget that, very important, plus or minus the square root of 26. So the only way to simplify 26 is 2 times 13. There's no further breakdown, so it just stays inside of that square root symbol because there's nothing we can pull out or do about it unless you want a really long decimal answer. So now we want to get x alone. Here is where you will do minus 5. What I did to one side, I got to do to the other because all is fair in math for now. So now we will have x equals negative 5 plus 20, the square root of 26. See, I make mistakes. Perfect reason to have a pencil. And x equals negative 5 minus the square root of 26. That is going to be your answer. Alrighty, so moving on to this next problem. This negative, we just want to get rid of that. So the way you get rid of the negative is you're going to take this whole problem, make it everyone else's problem, multiply it by negative 1. So now that this is everyone's problem, negative 1 times that just makes it x squared. Now we have negative 6x minus 10 equals 0 because 0 times negative 1 is 0. And that's why I took care of it now because this will work with my brain process. So I start thinking about what times what and what plus what makes everything go round. So what plus what makes negative 6? Well, easy. Negative 3. Negative 3 plus negative 3 is negative 6. So over here in my little doodle space, negative 3 times negative 3 equals positive 9. So I know that this negative 10 needs to become a positive 9. So I have to add 19. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So plus 19. This now becomes x squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 19. Then we know it's x minus 3, remember it's negative 3 times negative 3, squared equals 19. Ooh, here we go. Now we're really cooking. Take the square root of both sides. We have x minus 3 equals plus or minus, because we took the square root of a square, equals 19. Can't simplify that down, so we're just wanting to get x alone. So plus 3, to cancel that out, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So now it is, since I'm kind of running low on room, I just typically start to write sideways. X equals 3 plus the square root of 19, and x equals 3 minus the square root of 19. Box in that and write answer. So that way, done. Now it is just one more page. Take a break. Get some water if you need it. The video is here. I'm on a good roll. So we are wanting to take these formulas and convert them into vertex form. So the goal of vertex form, something you may want to memorize if you're allowed a note card, something you just want to write down, this formula to reference to. That's what the final thing is going to look like. Does it really help you a lot? Not all the time, but for me it just helps to say, okay, this is kind of what I'm supposed to have when I'm done. A constant, x minus something squared, and if I need to pull anything out, there's going to be an a in front, and I have to have a y equals. So we're looking at this. Y equals x squared minus 6x plus 4. Well, we already know it is not plus 4. This needs to be what times what makes negative, or what plus what makes negative 6. Well, we just solved that. It's 3. Negative 3. So that means we need a 9 in here, positive 9. So there's one of two ways to do this. I want to keep it the way we've been doing it, because that makes it less foggy than trying to do, oh, you can cancel out both sides, in one problem. So you just have to remember at the end of this problem, y has to be alone. That is the big thing. What I did here, I have to do here. Y plus 5 equals x squared minus 6x plus 9. Now we know that is going to be x minus 3 squared, y plus 5 equals, and now we want to get that y alone again, so subtract the 5 minus 5, y equals x minus 3 squared minus 5. That is your answer. The other way to do this is, and I mean, I'm just showing you because I brought it up, so I have to show it because that's how I am. Y equals x squared minus 6x plus 9, and its own thing, minus 9 plus 4. That's another way to do it. So then you can go y equals x minus 3 squared minus 9 plus 4 equals x minus 3 squared minus 5. Either way, you get the same answer, but essentially, oh, that was supposed to be a plus. Essentially, the way it's supposed to work is you're saying plus 9 minus 9 is 0. They cancel each other out. I would actually say leave out these parentheses, because as you get further in math, you'll be like, why am I multiplying by negative 9? That's not it. So essentially you're saying you're plugging in a 0 because plus 9 minus 9 equals 0. So yeah, either way, same answer, two different ways to work it. All right, this one is a smidge bit more complicated simply due to the fact that we have to pull this 3 out. So in order to pull the 3 out, it becomes 3 outside x squared. Well, because 8 is not divisible by 3, it becomes 8/3 x plus 2. So, put my little y equals. We want to start thinking about what plus what equals 8/3. So, do plus do equals 8/3. Well, 4 plus 4 equals 8. So it's actually 4/3. 4/3. Yep. Okay. So now it's going to be 4/3 times 4/3 equals 16/9 because 4 times 4, 16, 3 times 3. That's the important thing. They share the denominator, but since it's multiplication, you have to multiply them by each other. So that's 6/19. You can do this whatever way you want, but the way I'm going to do it is simple-ish. Not really. Sorry, my cat just walked over my side notes. I do try to work these out before I come on video simply because I don't want you guys to have to see even more erase marks in my thought process that gets extremely messy. I just want to show you guys like kind of more the cleaned up version. So, focusing on the parentheses, this is going to be y equals 3 x squared plus 8/3 x plus 16/9 plus 2 minus, there has to be this multiplication of 3 because there's multiplication of 3 over here. And I just realized how big I'm writing. So plus 2 minus 3, because this has to be a negative. It's actually negative 16/9, but I'm just pulling it out to the side. So this has a times 3, this one gets a times 3. So taking this one step at a time. Don't try and solve this all in one step because it's going to start getting like really complicated. Just kind of focus on this big piece first, which is going to be 3 times x plus what we've solved over here, 4/3 squared plus 2 minus 3 over the 16 divided by 9. I just did this with that little break in between because your brain's running, you're thinking a lot. Just even if you have to put the pencil down, stretch your fingers, because you don't want to make a simple mistake. Simple mistakes, you'll only get like a point deducted, but you're just like, oh, how did I goof? It's because you didn't take a second to stop. So -3 times 16/9. What I notice is you can take out 3 from this, like you can divide it, right? So that actually becomes 9 divided by 3 sort of thing. Like you can simplify this out. So this will then become 16/3 minus, of course. You want to take this plus 2 and give it the same denominator. So giving it 3 as a denominator, 2 times 3 is going to be 6 right? So we're just focusing on this part right here. Bring this down. That jingling noise you hear is my dog itching her neck. She just woke up from her nap. So we have y equals 3x plus 4/3 squared. Positive. So negative 16 over 3 plus 6 over 3 is going to be negative 10 over 3. And that is your final answer. It is a lot of work to get to this, which is why it's important to have your eraser. You need the paper to work out the problem. This is not going to be something that easily fits on a worksheet, unfortunately. When I was in high school, what I would do is I'd get my scrap paper, and I would just work the problems one at a time in order, staple it to the worksheet, and just turn it in that way. Even if you go ahead and write these answers on the worksheet, your teacher wants to see your work, and you're gonna need the answer on the notes anyways. So, I mean, it's up to you if you want to write the answers twice, but this just always made it easier for me. So thank you for watching tonight. I know this was a lot longer of an episode, but these were a couple different ways to solve completing the square. I hope everyone has a great night and is able to take away a lot from this video. If you learned something, please like, follow, drop a comment, let me know your thoughts. Have a wonderful evening, and bye.